Try to knock me down any way you can. But no dirty tricks.
As most action fans have heard, the extremely talented Australian martial artist and stunt choreographer Brad Allan passed away recently at the young age of 48. He had been a part of the Jackie Chan stunt team since the late 90s, eventually becoming the team's leader and a successful action designer in his own right. He worked on many memorable action films with directors such as David Twohy, Guillermo del Toro, Matthew Vaughn, and Edgar Wright. He was mostly a presence behind the scenes, but his most famous on-screen work is probably his fight against Jackie Chan himself in the 1999 action comedy Gorgeous. Gorgeous starts as a romantic comedy and remains mostly that, except for a handful of action scenes. Although not the main focus of the film, their writing and structure form a cohesive whole that enhances the story's appeal and mirrors the evolution of the male protagonist. By the time we reach the final fight, the stakes of the scene should be clear to the audience. Jackie Chan's character, also named Chan, has lost his way through life because of his tendencies for micromanagement and his willingness to manipulate those around him and bend existence to his will, which alienates the main character of Boo, played by Shuchi. This desire of his to always be in charge is expressed through the first two action scenes of the film. The first one, on the boat, draws up the picture of a cocky, almost James Bond-like seducer who can handle several henchmen at once without breaking a sweat. He controls the environment, as well as the fate of his adversaries. He exudes confidence, and he even chooses when to end the fight. The second action set piece, involving goons wearing US presidents' masks, is a purely slapstick exercise where Chan's superiority is never questioned. The scene harkens back to some of Jackie's most famous action comedies, like Project A or Mr. Nice Guy. Enter Brad Allan. Although not exactly a villain or even an antagonist, Allan's character, conveniently named Allan, works as a catalyst for Chan's character arc. The first time they meet, Allan forces Chan to spar with him, which is the first time Chan is given no choice but to go along with something he did not want to do. The tone shifts from comedy to serious drama through the action itself. No more gags, no more cockiness. Even the staging of the fight changes. While the first two sequences tended to put Jackie front and center, giving him control over his opponents, the fight on the docks uses more wider shots and thus favors a different type of visual dynamic, where the center of the screen is shared between the two fighters. Eventually, Jackie obviously loses this fight, and thus, part of his confidence. When the final fight starts, the character has hit rock bottom. He is again forced to fight Allan, who wants a rematch just because he loves fighting. But this time, what is at stake in this scene is how can Chan find himself again and turn his life around through the action itself. So far, Chan was shown fighting for two reasons: because he knew he would win, or because he was forced to do so. What he must do now is not try to defeat Allan, but to try and find joy in the propelling energy of life in the act of fighting. Let's have a look at the scene's construction. It starts with a good few shots dedicated to Brad and Jackie just warming up, as the soundtrack and the three observing characters sync to their movements. It reintroduces the idea that this fight might include elements of dancing, as was already implied during the fight on the docks, through a similar focus on the legwork. The fight's prologue highlights three things. First, the importance of rhythm. Then, Jackie's newfound abilities acquired through his training. And finally, the choreographic possibilities offered by the set. When the fight starts for good, the action design and the camera work synergistically illustrate that the fighters are on equal footing. Dolly in on their action rather than them, similar speed, punches that hit simultaneously, and so on. But now wait. Allan had started the fight by giving himself a disadvantage with the big boxing gloves. Realizing that Chan has gotten better, he takes them off and chooses smaller ones. The fight continues, and though Jackie performs incredible moves, Allan is clearly given an edge by appearing more confident and relaxed, and even more prone to being a show-off. Chan is impressive, but he seems to be on the defensive. By uttering the word "ready," Allan seems to imply he won't hold back any longer, and thus starts what might be the most interesting moment of the climax. The fight's middle section is the pivotal moment for Chan. Still high on the idea that his intensified training might have made him Allan's equal, he fights impressively but mechanically, without passion or enjoyment. The first shot in this section is a rather long wide shot that gives the audience a perfect view of the fight. Both men perform spectacular moves as they both struggle to keep control over the diegetic space around them. Allan seems to have the upper hand at first, but it changes when Chan jumps up to throw several kicks at him. He pushes forward with another spinning kick, and then Allan regains control by partially blocking Jackie out of view and forcing him to take a few steps back. The choreography is great because it cultivates spectacle as well as character. Both fighters seem to be equally skilled, but Allan gives the impression to be more aggressive in his desire to win. This is confirmed in the next shot, in which Allan mercilessly attacks Chan, who must retreat in order to stay in the fight. Notice the slight adjustment up of the camera to accommodate Allan's high-flying kick before it regains its original position, and then there's a second adjustment, this time to go down and continue to follow the action. It may not appear all that important, but in terms of cinematic grammar, it implies that the camera, and thus the eye of the audience, has to adapt to the reach of Allan's fighting skills, which cannot be contained within the existing frame, despite the already pretty wide composition. Now, this is not the first time this technique is used in the film, and the camera does do that for Jackie as well, when he has the upper hand of course. But it was never more obvious and expressive than up until now in this particular shot. What's interesting about the next shot is that it shows Jackie trying to regain control of the fight by imitating his opponent's moves. High flying kick, followed by a floor sweep. He cannot defeat his adversary because he fights like Allan and not like himself. He approaches the fight with an analytical mind, like he conducts his business, trying to apply his training like a good, talented student. We cut to a close shot of the fighters, and this time the camera movements appear the same but work differently. Let's have a look. First, the camera goes down, not to showcase one of Jackie's attacks, but to follow his dodge, effectively putting the emphasis on a defensive move. And then it goes down again, but for what seems to be the same reason, except focusing on Brad this time. Here comes the twist. Brad did go down to dodge an attack, but he follows it up with a punch that lands in Chan's ribs. Now, not that many punches or kicks land in this particular section of the fight, so this feels important, and it transforms the camera adjustment from the passive capture of a defensive move to a refocused shot of a successful attack. This is a great way of taking the audience by surprise and stimulate their cognitive involvement. Present them with one type of visual phrase whose meaning is crystal clear, and then subvert it almost immediately by changing its meaning through the action design itself. The next three shots cement Allan's superiority by pushing Jackie away repeatedly. He steps back and falls, and then is hit right in the chest, before hitting the wall. Allan enjoins him to continue fighting, but Chan is out of breath. This is the pause that allows the character to make the realization he is missing something. His training can help him hold his ground, but it will not make him win. He sees words that read "smile, don't worry," which reminds him of Boo and the joy he felt while she was helping him to train. He realizes he only got so much better because he did it with passion in his heart, with levity, with joy. And so here we go again, but this time he's going to enjoy it. Chan's newfound smile starts shifting the balance of power by making Allan uncertain of what is going on. Of course, Chan's own use of the question,
"Are you ready?"
signals the balance is about to tilt completely. Jackie surprises Brad by switching to a more circular style of upper body fighting, moving away from kicking territory, where Allan clearly has the advantage. Naturally, Allan attempts to recreate a sequence of attacks that gave him the upper hand earlier on, namely a high-flying kick followed by a floor sweep. Except this time, Chan loses virtually no ground at all, and Jackie even successfully turns the tide with an impressive forward kick. Allan throws everything he has at his opponent, to no avail. Notice that now, the camera tends to move and readjust simply to accommodate Jackie's moves, regardless of how impressive Allan's attacks are. And sometimes, those attacks are not even given the same due as before, like those spinning kicks that would have commanded the camera to move and frame them properly just a few minutes ago. And then comes the most rewarding part. The last section of the fight progressively evacuates the rage to make way for the rebirth of comedy, which had disappeared from the action. The choreography designed by Brad and Jackie takes off with a dance-inspired and mime-like series of moves that culminate in a mirror image of the dance scene between Chan and Boo from earlier in the film. Chan makes Allan his unwilling dance partner, effectively turning the tables on him by forcing his hand the same way Brad had forced Jackie's hand before. This comedic bit might appear silly to the distracted audience member, but it makes perfect sense in the scene's thesis. Action can bring us joy, and joy is the fuel for life. Besides, from a purely physical standpoint, the scene remains very impressive and has not been topped, neither by Jackie nor anyone else. The conclusion of the fight goes full slapstick comedy, reverting comfortably into Jackie Chan territory, where the hero embraces the rhythm of the action, exploits his skills, and makes use of the environment to prevail. And on top of that, we get some of the most hilarious performances from these two actors. In the end, Chan does not really win the fight. He says it himself. Pound for pound, Allan would have won. But he is the victor, because he bends the situation to his advantage, not by exerting control over it, but by letting go and embracing the pleasures the fight had to offer. Brad Allan completed several upcoming movies before passing, and his talent will be greatly missed. I think the action in Gorgeous is a great illustration of what Brad Allan's work was all about. Finding the joy in action cinema by continuously offering new and exciting things to the audience through meaningful, richly layered action designs. Think of the amazing fluidity and seamless kinetics of Prince Nwada's action scenes in Hellboy 2: The Golden Army, of Scott Pilgrim's endlessly inventive choreographies, or of Kingman's jaw-dropping set pieces. Chances are, you too found joy somewhere in them.
Hey, let's finish.